Hey, good afternoon. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580, 540-0580. If you have a legal question, legal concern, call in. We'll answer it here on the air, or at least we'll take a stab at it. Last week, somebody called, I remember, and asked me a question that was so complex, there's no way I could possibly answer it on the air without a little research. So if that happens, I'll ask you to post it on weekendappointment.com, and we'll get around and we'll answer it, and it'll be there for everybody to read. Let's see. In the news. We got that bonus gate trial going, and as you know, my firm's involved in that. Mike Palermo's been sitting there dutifully waiting a week for a jury to come back, and now they've replaced one of the jurors and told the jury they had to restart deliberation. And I talked to Bob Durgan the other day, and he says, when that verdict breaks, will you be able to talk about the case? And I said, yeah, Bob, I can do that for you. So if and when we get a verdict, I'll be on Durgan to talk a little bit about the case and give you some more background and things I can't go into. But I did want to take a moment and say, it's always interesting when you get involved in a case like that. I wouldn't have known Mike Vion or any of the other folks involved in the case from Adam until Palermo in my office got that case. And, I always wondered, because I always wanted to ask Mike Vion a question, because if you remember, he was the guy who voted for the pay raise, and then was the only guy who voted for the pay raise a second time. And I asked him why he did that, and he told me basically, the first time I did it was on principle. I was asked to do it partly by Cappy, the former Supreme Court justice, wanted the legislature to pass a pay raise for the judges and the legislature. And he said when I had the chance to take the vote back, I thought, no, I voted for this on principle once, and I'm not going to cower and change my vote when I voted on principle. And I thought that's an interesting measure of the man. He reminds me of, and I'll tell you in all honesty, I know Rick Santorum. Worked for him as a college Republican, and then had a chance to talk to him a few times over the years. And he reminds me of Rick Santorum, because Rick always said, I vote my conscience, and if it gets me unelected or it makes me unpopular, that'll be what'll happen. And as you know, Rick eventually got voted out of office when people decided they weren't exactly in tune with the way he was voting in the Senate. But I just thought that was an interesting observation. Both those guys, Mike Vion and Rick Santorum, are both from western end of the state. They're both, one's a Republican, one's a Democrat, but anybody who's ever been to the western end of the state will know that a western Democrat in Pennsylvania is a lot more common in a Republican in this area than they would with a Philly Democrat, for instance. So two good guys, and again, when that verdict breaks, I hope to tell you more about it, but I'm obviously wishing Mike Vion and everyone else luck. Rick, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's going on? My talk line number is 540-0580. Rick.
Yes, Carl. I have a quick question about the census form. I hear a lot of different comments about how the law relates to what you fill in.
Yeah.
And the latest that I understand is that the only thing you really have to do is tell them how many folks are in your household full time. Now, is that generally the law via Constitution or whatever?
Well, and that's always interesting because the census issue comes up a lot. The Constitution says, there should be an enumeration as provided by law. And some people say, well, the Constitution says there can only be an enumeration, therefore they can only ask me how many people are in the household.
Right.
Other people have said the by law part means that Congress is free to, jigger that around a little bit. And I understand that people want to take a very literal interpretation of the Constitution sometimes, but if you take a very mechanical interpretation of the Constitution based on the strictest, what could these words possibly, the barest minimum they could possibly allow for, it would be hard to explain a lot of things that government does, including, for instance, the Supreme Court's idea of judicial review, which I don't know where you find that in the Constitution.
Right.
I don't know where you find, Congress was given broad discretion in creating Article III courts. There's no great framework to that. Congress could abolish or create additional courts at any time that are inferior to the Supreme Court. So the Constitution itself seems to allow for a lot of leeway. I'm not sure because nobody's ever tested this.
Yeah.
But the way you read that form, it says you've got to answer all these questions. And there's legislation out there that says, by Congress, it says you have to answer the census. But it doesn't say just certain things and not other things.
Right.
So I guess someday somebody will refuse to answer, and some administration will actually call them to task on it. But here's the next thing. A law is only a law when it's enforced. And for best we can tell, nobody's ever prosecuted or nobody's prosecuting anybody for failing to cooperate with the census.
Well, I mean, the census by its definition means just to count, right?
Well, I understand that theory.
Yeah.
But what if Congress just says, let me put it to you this way. Why can't Congress just say, there's a law and you got to tell us all this stuff?
Well.
And why can't they?
Well, but does the law, would it be constitutional, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, let me ask it this way. Right now, why do you have to get a driver's license? Why can't you just drive? I mean, the answer is government gets to regulate you, and government can say to you, in order to get a driver's license, you got to do all these things. What we might say to you is, in order to get any basic services as a citizen, we're going to require certain data points on you.
Well, isn't driving a privilege and not a right?
Well, I don't know. That depends on how you want to look at it.
Yeah. Well,
if you live in Newville, it's a right. If you live in downtown Harrisburg, it's a privilege.
I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill.
No, and I'm not either. But I'm always concerned because people say, how can they do that? Well, the answer is government can do whatever people will let people do to them.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two is I'm not certain that it's unconstitutional to require you to give that kind of information in and of itself because we already gladly do it.
Yeah. Well, I've done it in the past, and I'm going to continue to do it. I guess. And I don't remember the last census whether there were as many questions. I'm a little. What I'm concerned about is in the long run, the government is slowly but surely taking power away from us and the states to become more of a centralized government controlling just about everything that we do anymore. And I don't know. I guess.
Rick, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Because this is always interesting. Because I'm a conservative guy at heart. Sometimes people think I'm a crazy liberal when I take a certain stance. But let me give you an example here. And I'm not saying you're for or against anything here. I'm just going to give you a couple scenarios. I'll have people tell me they're completely against the government having any information, and they don't want to answer any census questions, and they want the government out of their life. But then they're the same guy who tells me that we need a national ID card that's encoded with biometric data for everybody to keep illegal immigrants out. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. 1 minute you want government to know nothing about you, and now you're going to let them put your DNA on file.
Yeah.
Which side of the coin are you on? Well, I got to get rid of the illegal immigrant. I'm like, okay, then I guess you agree that government should have all that information. Well, no, they shouldn't, except, and you're like, listen, you got to make up your mind. You either have little government, restrained government, or lots of government. You can't pick and choose between the two because if you make lots of government in one area, it's going to creep into the other.
Yeah, well, it's a double-edged sword, and the thing that's positive about a national ID card is that for the folks that are honest and have nothing to hide, it's probably a positive thing, and it identifies everybody. If you're an illegal alien, it defines whether you are or not. And it can. I mean, from that point.
It also means, though, that someday, with all these biometric sensors that are out there and facial recognition software and whatnot, when if we were to have guys like John Adams and Sam Adams and the original Patriots walking around, the king would have just said to his intelligence agency, "Okay, where are those boys on the street right now? Oh, well, the cameras have got them here. All right, zap them."
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. It's just an interesting topic. Makes for good discussion, and
no, that's why I want to bring it up. And I understand the census. The weird thing about the census is now, and who likes the census? I'll tell you who really likes it is government because they use it to parcel out all their special little kickbacks. But business loves it too because they share all that data, and you can go online. You can get all the census data for free.
Yep.
And it's a marketer's dream because they'll tell you where if you're McDonald's and you're trying to locate a new restaurant, you look at census data as part of your package.
Well, that's a good point because with the social media marketing out there right now, you're right. That it'll be a boon. One last thing, and I'll let you go.
Okay.
The letter that everybody got that says your census is coming. What a waste of money.
Oh.
What a waste of money. It's just the bureaucrats though they don't have a bottom line.
No, they don't have a bottom line. Of course, the other funny thing is, I guarantee you, there's still like 1 million people out there who are like, what's the census?
Yeah, well, that's true. But then when they get it,
right,
they can ask the questions then. But why spend probably millions of dollars to send out just that letter?
Well, it reminds me of the lotteries because
it's nuts. Well, anyway, Carl, I appreciate it. Like your show and listen to you as often as I can.
Thank you very much, Rick. I'll let you go, and I'm going to go to break here. All right, friend?
Okay, thanks.
Right. Bye, Rick. 540-0580, Carl Rominger here, calling with your legal questions. Five 540-0580, Carl Rominger here, weekend appointment. If you're new to the show, this is a show where we answer your legal questions. And, of course, throughout the week, you can go to weekendappointment.com, post on there, post your question. I got some I've got to catch up on right now, and I'll be doing that. We had a little bit of a busy week. As some of you know, I've been substituting for Mike Palermo. Vinny Manfredo in my office and myself have been running around covering many of his hearings as he sits through the bonus gate trial. And, of course, while we're in jury deliberation, you can't get too far from the courthouse, which means, we send them down to Chambersburg if we could sometimes. But what ends up happening, a lot of times we move stuff around or I have to cover it. So I've been a little busier than usual. And, of course, obviously we're anxiously awaiting an end of the trial. And then just Friday, yesterday, they had to seat a new juror. So it's interesting. And, again, as I promised before, after the case is over, we'll talk to you more about it. And maybe Attorney Palermo will come on with us and talk a little bit about his experiences. Mike, you're on WHP 580.
Hey, Palermo. That's where my grandparents are from. How you doing today?
Good, man. Good.
Good. Question I have for you pertains to our wonderful governor. To my understanding, there was a huge pool of money that doctors had to pay into. It had to do with, I think, malpractice
Right.
and lawsuits. And I heard that, from a doctor actually, that Governor Rendell actually took that pool of money to balance the budget. My first question is, number one, is that legal? Number two, if it's not, can the governor be brought up on charges taking money from a pool that should never have been used to balance the budget in the first place?
Well, first, I don't know if it's legal or not because I don't know what legislation created it. And I'm familiar with the concept of what the doctors have to do, but I'm not familiar with all the weasel words that might be in that legislation that would allow the government to shift it around. But a lot of times you'll find, when a bill's passed, it says, okay, it's a bill to regulate trucking. And it purports to somehow regulate trucking. But then you find out there's 5,000 pages, and in those 5,000 pages, think about this health care bill they're about to pass.
Hopefully they don't, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, crossing my fingers, but
it's unconstitutional. It's the biggest scam in the world.
But my point is it's 187 pages, and most of it's crap, excuse my French, but a lot of it's going to turn out to do all kinds of things that have nothing to do with health care. Somehow it's going to regulate the size of soccer nets, and you're going to find that on page 173.
Right.
So my point is I don't know whether the governor had the legal authority to do that or not. Number two, I don't know if they slipped legal authority into some of the budget legislation to retroactively change that and steal that money. Because that's the thing government does all the time. We're going to earmark these funds, and we're going to put it in a special sinking fund that will only ever be used for this. So it's okay. You pay in now, but we'll never use it for anything else. And then 3 years later, they change the legislation around. They borrow the money or steal the money, whichever way you want to look at it.
Steal.
Now, here's the next question. Could it be illegal? Let's say the governor technically couldn't have done what he did.
Right.
Well, I don't know if it's illegal or not because when you're a public official and you steal from the public to give to the public, it was the way they would explain it, okay?
Right.
There's no private pecuniary benefit. Therefore, there's probably not an ethical or criminal violation of the law because there's no private pecuniary gain.
Wow, that's interesting. You're actually conveying to the people that these politicians are somewhat of a Robin Hood. Take from the who has and give to the have not.
I'm not portraying it that way. It reminds me of when a long time ago Bob Durgan asked me this one. When they first wanted to put a casino in Gettysburg. Okay?
Right.
The casino agreed to give Gettysburg $1 million a year back then if they would support the application. And the Gettysburg town fathers agreed. And Bob said, isn't that bribery? Aren't they bribing the township officials for their vote? And the answer is, it is a form of a bribe, but it only becomes an illegal bribe if the township's fathers took a personal benefit from it. The fact that the township's taking a benefit from it means it's a legal bribe.
Wow.
So
if it benefits all of the godfathers and not just a few, then it's okay.
Basically. Mike, I don't know the answer to that, but I think our discussion kind of highlights the issues, so maybe somebody can dig up the legislation for us. All right, my friend, I got to take some more callers here.
Yeah, bye-bye.
540-0580. Dave, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Hey, Dave.
Oh, hi, Carl. How you doing? Hey, I have a question you probably answered on the air 100 times, but I missed it. It involves right-of-way.
Okay.
And I have a lot that I have some activity on, not a home, but the township vacated the last perhaps 125 feet of the roadway. And I now have a lot right at the end of a paved roadway. I understand unofficially from the township that I still have right-of-way through that vacated piece of ground. And so do all the neighbors that go down that lane. In other words, they said they're not going to extend the paved roadway out there,
right?
But they couldn't give that land to anybody. So having the right of way before they vacated it, do I still have the right of way to go over that ground now?
I would think you would. I mean, your right-of-way is not going to – you had a right-of-way originally.
Right.
Your right-of-way is not going to disappear.
Okay, now, that was my understanding. And if I choose to go on the paved route, well, then it adds about a mile to my trip, believe it or not. So I thus far haven't had any real problems going back and forth. It only involves two neighbors that straddle the on-paved part of that roadway.
Right.
Excepting that one neighbor has extended his wood pile halfway out that right-of-way, like he assumed possession of his vacated portion of that ground. Now, sometimes I have a tough time getting through due to varying situations. What would be my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever step it takes to have him remove that wood pile?
What we would do usually if you came to see me, well, first I would tell you to go talk to him, okay? But if you guys aren't on friendly terms already, or the conversation doesn't go well, which it sometimes doesn't, I would simply write him a letter that says, hey, represent your neighbor. There's this right-of-way. Here's the history of the right-of-way. You just can't block it. No big deal. We'll give you 30 days to make sure that, and don't let it happen again, but very like kissy, lovey kind of letter, so as to try to stay everybody on the friendly side. And then if the wood isn't removed in the time frame we allot, then another letter that says, hey, you got 10 days to get the wood off or we're going to court, at which point either he would get his own lawyer and maybe some correspondence would go back and forth, or people would stake out their positions. And then ultimately, if he refused to remove it, we'd go and get an injunction from the court to, A, require him to remove it, and B, restrain him from blocking the right-of-way.
Mm-hmm.
And I've litigated many of those cases over the years, both from the person who's blocking the right-of-way, and from sometimes we've been able to successfully allow somebody to block a right-of-way if it isn't actually a right-of-way. Because people sometimes claim they have a right-of-way when there isn't one. But most often the case comes up, there's been a right-of-way that everybody's been using for 100 years, and then some new guy moves in from the city, and he looks around, and his wife and says, dear, what are we going to do? These trucks keep coming up back through our woods back here. Oh, we'll put a fence up. And they never bother to figure out that that's actually somebody's way in and out of their house back up on the mountain or their hunting cabin or something.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, they put up some iron gate with a big padlock on it. And sometimes we resolve those by everybody who needs to use it gets a key. So we'll all agree to padlock it, to keep the riffraff out, so to speak. But we'll give everybody a key, and everybody lives happily ever after. Or sometimes we resolve it by the judge saying, take it down.
Mm-hmm.
And now, as I was listening to your description, and some of the listeners were probably going, okay, I can't quite visualize this. One of the other things we lawyers really like to do in land cases involving right-of-ways and things like that, and judges do as well, it's called a view. That's where we actually go out and look at the land and look at what you show us what's going on. And I can recall a case not too long ago I had where the judge said to the other lawyer and I, do you mind if I go out and take a view without you guys there? And he just wanted our permission, go up and look at it, because otherwise the lawyers and the judge go up together, and the parties. And we said, sure. And the issue was whether my client was properly maintaining the right-of-way such that people could get through or not. And the judge reported back that since he was able to drive his minivan up and down the right-of-way, he assumed that anybody else with a four-wheel drive should be able to get through, so it was probably properly maintained for purposes of a hunting right-of-way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's interesting sidelight on it. When this neighbor, I don't know if it was him or the neighbor before, bought his piece of ground there where his home is, not the real estate company, but maybe the abstract company or whatever, asked us to sign a letter which we would agree to help maintain that piece of ground, since my lot also faced on this on paved portion, and I signed the letter that I would help keep
right.
that open, and but I've I'll probably go and talk to him. The thing that brought that his head, he has a young kid, and his young kids that just got their driver's license tend to be a little bit insolent. He had it blocked off the other day, and I asked him to move his truck, and he gave me a bunch of BS. And so that kind of brought it to head and said, okay, the old saying, don't get in piston contest
right.
with a skunk, so that's where we stand. But probably what I'll do is take some photographs of exactly what this consists of, and come over and see you and show you exactly what's going on.
All right, Dave, feel free to do that. I'm going to let you go because I'm going to go into break here, and then I'm going to take a few more callers.
Okay, just one other remark. Mr. Manfredo handled something for me the other day on the 11th, as a matter of fact, and did a super job.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I like both. Mike and Vinny are both great guys, and I enjoy having people working with me who I can trust and who I know are aggressive. I sometimes find over the years I've worked with a lot of different lawyers, and it's hard to find somebody who you can just sort of know. You let them go do their thing, and they're going to come back, and you're going to be proud of the results. I appreciate hearing that. I really appreciate that, Dave.
Yeah, he did a nice job.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
All right, take care. I'll see you guys after the break. 540-0580. Hey, 540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions on the air on WHP 580. If during the week you need to get a hold of me, go to weekendappointment.com. You can email me from there. You can get my contact information. Feel free to call in. And, of course, I did post a link to a story on the seating of a new juror in the Bonus Gate case, so feel free to check that out as well. And, of course, if you don't know it, or you've forgotten, or you're just too lazy to do it, go to weekendappointment.com, get your free will kit, send it in, and get your will. I just read a few more of those this past week. Giving away free wills all the time, so make sure you claim yours. There is no excuse for a husband and wife not to have updated wills or not to have them, or if you're a single person, not to go have one done. Or at least have me look over your current situation and tell you whether you need to update your will or not. So go to weekendappointment.com, go to the free will section. You got to become a registered user. That's the catch-22. That way, you get updates about the website and things like that. But you get a free will, and I would say that's a $250 value. And it could actually be a priceless value if you really need one. Kevin, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Hey, Kevin.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good, man. What's going on?
I think it was last December I called in and mentioned that my dad was denied long-term care benefits because of the facility that he was at.
Okay.
You remember that?
It's kind of ringing a bell. They because they were saying that the facility didn't qualify for something.
Right. The facility didn't have nursing staff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They only had it 12 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Right. It wasn't expensive enough for them to pay for it, I think was their basic argument, or it wasn't what were they trying to say?
Well, here's my dad qualified, but the facility, because the way his policy is written, they require 7-day-a-week, 24-hour-a-day nursing care. So I called you, and you said either you can send him a letter and start fighting it or move him to a different place.
Right.
Well, what I did was I called my dad's lawyer after listening to what you said, and he specializes in elder care, and he said, don't bother fighting. He said, your best bet is to find a facility that would be covered.
Right.
So that's what I did. I spent some time on the internet, found a place that he thought my dad's lawyer this place would be covered. And what I did was I showed up there, showed up the policy. They said, yeah, we think he'd be covered. But before I went to the expense and time of moving him, I sent a registered letter to the insurance company with the brochure and everything else saying, look, if I move my dad to this place, will you cover him? And I got a letter back saying, yeah, we'll cover it. And make a long story short, last Monday I deposited his first check.
Excellent.
So, I think my advice to anybody out there with a loved one that's in a rehab facility or probably going to transition to one of these longer-term care facilities and has this long-term care policy, get it pre-approved by the insurance company before you go to the expense of moving them to one.
I see what you're saying. You're basically, and I think it is good advice, which is if you think it's covered, it doesn't hurt to check out. It's almost like a pre-approval from a medical insurance provider where you call in and say, hey, I'm going to go see the dermatologist. Are you paying for it?
Right, exactly. Because, it takes a lot of time moving the people there. They have a transition period of about a month to get used to the procedures and processes. And, when somebody's in their 80s and they're not that good at health and stuff, it takes a toll on them.
Oh, yeah.
And, I learned through this process, and actually once I hooked up with the insurance company and told them what I was going to do, they were all for it, and we'll see how it goes, but it worked out pretty good.
Well, thanks for following up. I always appreciate to hear how things turned out, and it does sound like that is the right way to go. So that's good. That's good advice. We'll put that in the back of the head. So that should be our first answer to get pre-approval.
Yep, I think that's a good way to go. Anyway, I also had a great morning Carlisle fishing game this morning, Sporting Clays.
Oh, yeah, you know what? I actually thought about shooting this morning, and I bought ammo. I bought some ammo earlier this week to do it, but my little one hasn't been feeling so well, so it wasn't going to happen this morning.
Well, they're doing it tomorrow, too, a special Sunday shoot.
Oh, what time's that?
It probably starts at 9. It's a 100-target shoot, $25.
I think that might work.
There you go.
All right, my friend, thank you very much.
Yep, we'll see you.
All right, bye. 540-0580. Jeff, you're on WHP 580. Jeff.
Hey, hi, Carl.
Hey.
Hey, first-time caller, long-time listener.
Well, thank you.
Enjoy the show. I have a question for you. You're in the Carlisle area, so I'm sure you're familiar with lime lots when it comes to farms and things like that.
Okay.
With an estate settlement in the family that's going on right now, we have discovered that we have a lime lot that we didn't know existed. And the property that's owned around it over the years was sold. So it's basically sitting there landlocked. The gentleman that called before, was talking about right-of-ways. And I was just wondering, when you have a piece of property like that and there is no right-of-way, that's been agreed to.
Right.
What kind of options do you have for a piece of land like that?
Well, believe it or not, Pennsylvania has a statute that allows us to do a private condemnation to get a right-of-way or roadway out of a piece of landlocked property. And it's not all states have this. It's an old statute. And you can basically come in and you can figure out a way to get to a road, and you can go to your neighbor and say, I'm coming across your property. And they say, what? And you say, well, we can agree to this, or I can do a judicial action. Now, just like if the government condemns a piece of land, you have to pay for that, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So if we were going to push a road out, and I'll give you an example. This came up in a case I had up in Perry County where some developer said he was going to develop this parcel of land, and, of course, one of our ways to get out to the road would have been across this parcel that was going to be potentially developed. Obviously, if you push a road through there, you change the way they could develop it, you might greatly affect their value, and a court might be convinced that you're going to have to pay a lot of money for that. On the other hand, if you go down the edge of their property and you have very little effect on the usability of the land, then the value of that right of way that you push through, that roadway is going to be very small. Most importantly, maybe you can cooperate with the other landowner, and everybody can reach a happy ending. You know, I'll agree to push the road through. You just agree I don't pay you anything, but you can take the benefit of it as well later. So there is a remedy for landlocked land in Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate that. I didn't know if there was any alternative or if you were just kind of locked in. And
no, and you know why we do that is because now I always get in a fight with Bob Durgan about this, about the highest and best use to land, and we want land to be used for its highest and best use. Well, how do you get land used for its highest and best use if it's landlocked? So first thing we do is we don't allow people to create landlocked situations anymore, which for some reason we used to allow. But number two, even in the 1800s, they realized if once a piece of land's landlocked, we need to put it back into use. I mean, even to timber it, somebody's got to be able to get back there. So we have this statute that allows us to Private Condemnation Act that allows us to get landlocked property unlandlocked to the detriment, arguably, of its neighbors.
I recall that conversation with Bob. I heard that program. And yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right.
I appreciate the information.
Not a problem.
Yep.
Take care.
Yep. Bye.
540-0580, 540-0580. And, of course, remember to visit weekendappointment.com throughout the week. Dale, you're on WHP 580.
Well, Carl, I don't know if there's a proper venue for this, but I'm looking up some acts, laws of Pennsylvania. Act 9 of 2001.
Okay.
And the other one is Act 40 of 2003. How can I find these laws on the Internet?
Well, let's see here. I would go to Google and try quote, Act 9 of 2001, end quote, and see what you get there. Let's see here. Do you know what they deal with, those two acts?
Yes, they're the benefits improvements for the retirement plans of the state, the employees and schools.
Okay. Now, when I do quote Act 9 of 2001, end quote, in Google, I do come up with a website here from the state itself that has some information.
Really?
Yeah.
So all I do is go into Google and
put quote Act 9 and just the number 9 of 2001, end quote. You probably get a few results.
Okay.
Try that to start with. If it still doesn't work, post it on weekendappointment.com, and I'll see what I can do about pulling it from some of my sources and giving you some links.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much, Carl.
All right, Dale, no problem.
Bye.
540-0580. I can help you with your internet. I'll see you after the break. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions on Weekend Appointment. Getting a little jiggy with it here. I actually let Shane pick the music, so that's how we get this stuff, you know. Actually, he always wants to do Mr. Roboto, and I nixed that, so. He's looking
tell me what to do.
He's looking at me, okay. He'll just take me right off the air. Hey, Shane, answer the phone, man. This guy wants to talk to us, I think.
I don't have to yell about it.
All right. 540-0580, call. Oh, he hung up. Look at that. You missed him.
Probably the same person that hung up on me before.
If somebody keeps calling in and hanging up, I need to explain this to you folks. You're not going to call in and end up right on the radio. You're going to have to talk to Shane first. We have to make sure, A, you're not a nutbag, B, you don't swear a lot, and C, that you have a legitimate question and you don't think I'm the plant doctor, okay? So that's why he has to screen you just a little bit.
Thank you for that soapbox.
All right. Now, what do I want to talk about here? Well, we're anxiously awaiting the United States Supreme Court decision here to extend the Second Amendment to the states. And when that happens, I think there's going to be a lot of lifting for us to do because we're going to run around and we're going to try to restore some gun rights to a lot of people who've lost them. And, I've gotten in this – I always get in these fights with Durgan callers. And I don't know. Maybe I pick them. Maybe they pick them. I don't know. But, okay, some guy's got a misdemeanor from 10 years ago. He should not be able to own guns because he's a criminal and he did the time and he did the crime and he should have known. But, well, yeah, okay. So he was 18 and he committed a minor misdemeanor and now he shouldn't be able to own a gun. I think those laws have to go, and I'm hoping we're going to be able to strike them down. Remember this. as long as the government can continue to restrict what you can and can't do, and the more involved they are in things, the harder it is going to be to assert those rights in the future. What else do I want to talk about? So when we get that information, 540-0580, 540-0580, in case you need the talk line number, when we get that Supreme Court decision, I'm going to, of course, post it right away to weekendappointment.com, and if you're a registered user, you'll get a news flash on it as well. So make sure you are registered at weekendappointment.com. Of course, you get the free will there as well. And we're going to put that out. The other thing I want to talk about is this little healthcare fiasco. I'm hoping, since I'm on WHP 580, that the listeners are not going to be pro Obamacare here. But if you are, go soak your head. But that said, we need hope. Cross your fingers that they don't pass it, because there's a lot of terrible things in this bill. It's horrible, horrible, horrible. It's going to destroy healthcare as we know it. It's going to destroy the world's greatest healthcare system. And if you think I'm kidding, listen, government screws up everything they do. Really, they do. And I don't. I know there's some good people in government, but for some reason, the goodness of the individual never translates into the actions of the government. And our founders knew that, and that's why they did everything they could to take that necessary evil government and strangle it, or make it strangle itself as hard as they possibly could. And so government should not be involved in the private sector. Government should not be taking these things over. So call your congressman. Please call them, email them, call them, get hold of our Dems and our Republican reps in the listening district, but mainly the Dems. They're the ones who hold the power here, and they need to know they're not going to be in office if this passes. And even if they vote against it, they should think long and hard about it. Cheryl, you're WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Yes, I have a question about signing contracts in your home or versus a place of business, and how long you have to cancel the contract.
Okay. Well, it doesn't matter whether you sign at home or at a place of business, I don't think.
Oh, it doesn't.
Many contracts have rights of rescission, and so there are things like the right of rescission on certain consumer contracts.
This would be a consumer contract to purchase services or a product.
Right. And most of those are 3-day rights of rescission.
Okay. And it doesn't matter whether you purchase there or in your home.
Right.
Okay,
right.
Then thank you very much.
All right. And not every contract, of course, has a 3-day right of rescission, and not everything. The law doesn't require rights of rescission automatically in many contracts. However, we always are concerned, why are you signing contracts in your home? Well, that's the high-pressure sales initiative. What I recommend you do, if you have somebody that wants you to sign a contract, and you think you want to sign it, or you're not sure. You think you want to sign? Yeah, I want to sign. No, maybe I'm not sure. No, I really do. Well, maybe. Is this a good idea? You should say to the person, tell you what, let me keep the contract for a day or two, look it over, think about it, and I'll get it to you. And say, no, you need to sign it today, special lands today, blah, 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 blah. You know what? Answer is bull. No. Anybody's trying to sell you anything, and they tell you that, today's the last day to qualify, or it's, a special promotion. If they're really, really, really trying to sell you a legitimate product, there's usually no real deadline, no sudden deadline. You got to think really long and hard about that. And you know what? Even if you're going to miss the $50 in savings or the $1,000 in savings, it might still be better to lose out on that than to get rushed into something that's not in your best interest. So think about that, and always ask for a chance to have someone look it over for you. Don't blame me. Just tell her, I'm taking it to Carl Rominger. He's going to look it over for me, so you leave it with me. I don't have to actually bring it to me. Just get a cooling down period to make sure you're not getting a high-pressure sales job. Or more importantly, if it is a big contract and it's important and it might affect your future, take it to a lawyer. Jay, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Well, Carl, you got my hackles up. I'm one of the guys who listen to this station, and I'm not necessarily on one side or the other. And I don't know why a radio station has to promote one side. But you just talked about health care and government. I really would like to hear your legal opinions, not your political opinions.
Well, I have to work them in
there. I have
there.
some questions about the whole thing, too. That's not the point. The point is everybody's always knocking government. I worked for the government for some years, and there are a lot of things I don't want the government in, and I don't want the government to do. But it's always one-sided. I never hear you guys knock the military part of the government. I mean, maybe we should take, if government's so bad, maybe we should take the military and contract it out to private sector.
I thought we did that already.
We did? Well, I'm talking about the actual
I understand. And I'm being a little facetious, but the reality is, I mean, for every guy we have in uniform, we've got, 4 or 5 people who – so we now say, oh, no, we're only sending 50,000 troops. What we really mean is we're buying 50,000 troops and 300,000 support people who would have been troops 100 years ago.
Maybe. But somebody's got to make a profit, I guess. That's what war's all about, isn't it?
And Jay, I am not. I am not. I'm not above criticizing any portion of government, but I hope you heard me say that there are many good people in government, and I
didn't hear that.
So
I didn't hear that. I just guess I just think it's an easy whipping boy, and
it is.
it's like as soon as they want to. A mayor or something wants to get the citizens up in arms, he threatens to cut back on the police and firemen.
Oh, and it works every time.
So,
all right, Jay, that's the music. I got to go.
Thanks a lot.
Hey, weekendappointment.com. Throughout the week, if you want to get a hold of me, post your question there. You want to find my phone number, you go to weekendappointment.com. You want to get a free will, you go to weekendappointment.com. You want all the bald spots to go away on your head, you go to weekendappointment.com. We fix it all there. So stop by weekendappointment.com, register to get your free will, email me, and I'll see you all next Saturday to talk again.